Welcome to the podcast of consisting of two handsome men.
Who will be here later. But
Take-
for now,
yes.
we're filling in.
Yes, they'll be coming later. Two okay-looking men. INTJ, Derek, INTP, me, James. And we're continuing our podcast for another episode today of 2 of 16, your MBTI podcast. Yeah. And the topic I wanted to talk about today is relativity of truth and MBTI. And that's one of many top titles I was exploring.
Well, title or not, what is the relativity of truth? What does that mean exactly? I mean, because I've argued at length with people about what truth is.
Uh-huh.
Now we're talking about relativity of truth. So what might that mean?
Okay. What that means is, if you ever watched, is each person, okay, let's back out and talk about how in the cognitive functions, there are eight. There are 8 cognitive functions, right? Now, which one's better than the other?
The ones that I have.
Well, let's see, that is essentially what I'm saying.
And IT is better than all of them.
Yeah. So an INTJ would say that. However, someone with NIT at the bottom of their stack, say an ESFP, would say, "Oh, those like essentially an ESFP lowers those so that they can focus on SE and FI."
I don't know that ESFP would have the wherewithal to even comprehend what the cognitive functions are, but
Well, yes. See,
or the interest.
yes, they suppress intuition a lot, and so this exploration of an abstract concept is not so important to them. Now, who's right? Who is the arbiter of what is actually the more valuable thing, the INTJ or the ESFP? And I've been thinking that through, and I would love to discuss that right now. Not so specifically there, but the reason why I ended up at this topic was because my original topic was going to be about detachment, the concept of detachment, Buddhism. I mean, you can. I'd love to hear what you think about that concept, because you explored that concept before, right?
I did it long ago, and I don't even have a definition for it. I just know detachment is like, I think of it as detachment from things, which is fascinating because for an INTJ, we're more thing-oriented than we are people-oriented, whereas an INTP, from my understanding, is like, you ask them how their day was, they're going to talk about the people that they were around, whereas I'll talk about what, like what I did or with what machine or something. Anyway, detachment is where I kind of detach myself from reality, from things, and just kind of not. I don't know the best definition for it, but would you literally just not to rely on anything. Try to just let things be as they are.
Oh.
I mean, there are just different levels of detachment, and then like further yet, it's like when I go into NI mode, it's like I'm even detached from my own body.
Yeah.
And INTJs are infamous for that. Like we don't really know what's going on internally anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
I see, and that's fascinating to me, because what I hear is almost like the concept of detachment gave you, told you to put SE aside and go more into your NI.
Yeah, and even TE, it's like, what? How could you be detached but like focused on any task? There are no tasks. There's no task to be done. Nothing matters. Really. I mean, that sounds really lame, but like, and it's simply for me, it's I consider it like a cache reset kind of thing, like, or just a memory wipe, or even we've talked about brain dumps before.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of detaching from the things that we're thinking about, what we're worried about, we're concerned about, what's important, for at least for a moment. Obviously your health is important, your family is important, but and then just for me, it's also, and I don't know if this is detachment, but it's also a moment for me to go, okay, what is really important? What are my priorities? So I kind of reshuffle everything, resort things, and maybe go, oh, I overlooked this, or you know what, that's not really that important. Let's let that go. And so it allows me to let go. like I think Buddhism talks about letting go, like removing suffering from your life is the goal there. So I'm like, yeah, this is really hard for me. An app I'm working on right now, a SaaS, was giving me a hard time. So I got to a brick wall that I just couldn't get through, and I was like, okay, stop. Like I'm not getting anywhere. Center myself, deep breaths, think about something else, read a book, and then I started on a different project, just temporarily, which is not so INTJ of me, but my vision right now is so grand that there are so many parts to it that anything I work on, what I mean is there at any given moment right now there are multiple projects that are required in order to get to where I'm going. So again, but at that time, at that moment, it was like things are hard. I was feeling sick even, and so I was like, yeah, this is I will either crash eventually or I can just, like you said, recenter myself or sort of just detach every bit of me from the physical world.
That's fascinating. And what I hear in that, what I was like, I first went down the topic of, or the process of working through detachment so that we can talk about it in an episode. And as I explored it, I start to realize that the value of the concept of detachment might be tied to personality type. And so more for introverts and INTJ, like specifically for INTJ, INTP. I thought about it for ISTP. The introverts uh, would hear the concept of detachment and perhaps resonate with it a lot. It's like, wow, that's how I can reconnect with myself, right? That's how I can remember. That's how I can return to what is most important to
So
me.
what I'm hearing is someone who's sort of trapped in an extroverted world and that needs an escape can find that through that, whereas someone who is an extrovert that's their comfort zone. So, you know, it would be the other way around. Like if they were forced to be introverts for a while, they would want to retreat to their extroverted, to the real world, to the
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly,
that's what I'm seeing.
exactly. So there's a recent short I saw from Mr. Tai Lopez, and he said, no matter what's going on in your life, never socially isolate yourself.
Who
That's
said
the
that?
Tai Lopez.
Oh, that genius.
Tai Lopez said, no matter what's going on in your life, never socially isolate yourself. And I type him as ENFP. ENFP. So of course, he's gonna believe that that's true. However, if I never socially isolated myself, I would become just a wreck.
And that's actually the only thing that rubs me wrong about anyone else. It could be I've watched YouTube channels of INTJs where they tell me something. I don't like being told some absolute thing because I know immediately that that's foolish.
Mhm.
Even if I'm an INTJ, so you would think, well, no, you must agree with them, or you will agree with them because you think the same way, blah blah blah. No, as soon as someone tells me what I should be doing, I immediately say, I don't say no, but I know that the answer is no because then I think, okay, I should think about this and see what they're talking about, and I go, that's BS.
Mhm.
And I immediately know that's what works for them. So why don't you say something more like, what I find helps me is, or I have noticed that when I isolate myself from people and blah blah blah, I feel this way or this occurs, and here's some results. And I know it's a bit T. I'm just saying, like, give me something.
Yeah.
I don't care where it comes from. Which cognitive function? I'm sure there's even a TI, an E explanation, even an FE explanation. Like, this is how I see the group would feel if I did like this. Not just like, no, you should. This is what. Don't do that or do this. You will be rich or you will be happy if you do this. And I just immediately tune out.
Yep. Yep. I also okay to psychoanalyze you a little here.
Right.
I hear opposing NE here, where like other people's intentions and other people's aims at doing stuff, you instantly
No.
block.
But I'm not blocking it. I'm not anti NE because to me that NE, to me at least, which might be the wrong definition, is leaving yourself open to exploration. When someone gives me a finite answer to something that literally has an infinite amount of solutions, then that's to me anti NE. Anti NI, I don't know, what is that? SESI? Like telling me like this way,
Oops.
do it that way. And that says to me, okay, you've taken something that was huge and now you've not only narrowed down so far as like that's the only way. Because frankly, when you tell someone to do something, that's a command. What is the opposite? Anything that opposes a command opposes a command. is all I'm getting at. So I'm sorry, I do disagree that I don't think that's opposed to NE. In fact, the more time I spend with INTP people, the more the more I find that I'm open to NE. It's not that I'm open to it; I'm just used to it. It's like, oh well, it's part of my life, so I better get. It's like I don't necessarily love it, but I see the merit in it. Whereas I still have a lot of trouble seeing the merit in FE. However, despite all of the conversations we've had in the past, like I'm also understanding of that and I'm open-minded to that as well. And I think that's a level of maturity, if I could speak properly, maturity that I've reached through, I don't know at what point in my life, just through understanding people and understanding the world. And this is somewhat a visionary thing as well. If you're able to see the future, you are able to see that there are places where individualism or being an individual and sharing my individual opinion, my introverted feeling, it can be useful, but I can also see where it's an act of futility, especially if you're talking for a whole group of people. Because like FI is like I was thinking about this the other day. FI is a one-on-one thing. Anytime I speak to someone, I say this is what you should do, or this is what I think, or this is how I feel. I can't. That's a one-on-one thing because I'm trying to like literally I'm doing a body swap and then I do the opposite. I go, okay, how would James feel? So I do reverse FI is what I call it. And like that is like a small scale FE. So if you are a group of one, that works. But FE to me is just one to many, whereas FI is a one-to-one. So database relationships come to mind here. And so what's best for the group? And so I see it as a law of averages. So that's why the really, really outlying data is what gets weeded out by FE. And that's unfortunately how it works. And I understand why that's necessary because, well, I'm not going to go into depth, but I feel like that should be shocking to anyone that knows that I'm an INTJ because FE should be just, unheard. But I don't agree. I think if you have been open as I have been to learning about people and learning about psychology and learning about the world, you can overcome all of your shadow functions. What I mean by overcome is maybe what's the word I want to embrace them, so to speak. Again, not a very INTJ word. Very tangential to what we're talking about. But.
Oh yeah, well that's completely fine. I could go down that path, but. I will say that's fascinating though. What FI actually like? I almost hear FI is individually focused empathy, and it's like group focused empathy it just doesn't feel as important at all, or it doesn't feel as important.
I don't think there's a level of importance there, and I feel like that empathy that you mentioned, I don't know that comes naturally. I think FI is very selfish. It's very individualistic. It's my morals, my values, my very selfish. And it's only when you want to understand other people, you can. I don't know. I thought, okay, it's that whole what's it called like in the Bible to do unto others.
Do unto others as you would like to have done to yourself.
Yeah, that's literally FI. And so that's the empathy side of FI if used correctly. But I feel like there's probably enough people that have FI even higher in in fact, the stronger the FI, maybe the less likely are to do what I'm doing. But maybe it's because it's the third. Maybe it's because it's my like chill out function. That's why I'm able to just kind of like, oh, well, this is how I feel. So I wonder how they feel. And I don't know how other people feel. So I use that as a tool to figure that out. Now I could theoretically, get information from a large group of people and then use that as a pattern and see that pattern and then create a synthetic FE out of that.
Yeah.
But I don't think that would be me using FE naturally.
No, and well, what I hear in that is you're using TE to build a sort of FE.
It's just a simulation.
Yeah.
However, I feel like that's still better than just ignoring it or saying no or denying it or segregating it from my psyche.
It's true, and I hear the health in that, and I also believe that is almost like the healthy extent of maturity when it comes to the other functions. In my opinion, I feel that the lower ones, I can appreciate that they exist. I can accept that they exist. However, I will not go so far as to uh, adopt and emulate them in my own life.
I see.
Uh, and wonder what you think about that.
You probably don't want to know what I think about it because, like, I feel like whether it's my FI or just my experience, that sounds a bit immature.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is because if I'm hearing you right, you're just flat out rejecting them. You're just saying no. I'm not going to try to involve those in my life.
Well, no, it's more it's just it's what I'm mostly talking to is respecting the hierarchy of the values in your stack. Like okay, like this like an ESFP says, oh, like let's not think about what we're gonna like what the long term plan is. Let's just enjoy what this is right now. And you're like, okay, yeah, you can do that.
Yeah.
However, I'm going to think about
That sounds foolish to me.
Wait,
For
so
me, it sounds like
Alright.
what I mean is, of course, NITE. Those are always going to be the top priority. Those are going to be the things I spend most of my time on, and I'm keenly aware that that's where my energy should be spent. That is where it's spent most efficiently. And trying to FE or even simulate FE or any of that takes a huge amount of effort on my part. However, there's a word ends need. What is it? Something like
the ends justify the means.
that's not what I meant. There's something about needs. Anyway, like when it's required, I'm not going to run away from it. I'm not going to deny it. I'm not going to say no. I'm going to say, you know what? I've used my NI. Too bad you don't have it. Haha. So I'm saying to the other person, but I foresee that this is necessary, and therefore it is worth the effort because all the NIT in the world is not going to get us out of this situation, and therefore I'm open to utilizing the other functions if need be.
Utilizing, okay. Well,
Okay, words I'm using are sounding very TE, or just recognizing their necessity in this current situation.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with you.
Okay.
I completely agree with you there. However, I will not go so far as to say, an ESFP tells me, "Oh, just ESFP with me," and I'll say,
Well, that's not.
"You can ESFP, and I'll let you do that, and I won't go so far as to just ESFP with you."
Yeah, that doesn't. That's not required. Like I was talking about situations that you've labeled as, critical. Like those times when it's necessary. If someone's just like, "Hey, dude, let's go chill," it's like, no, I will say no. Yeah, or whatever. I mean, if I'm in the mood, sure, but that's not what I was talking about. I'm looking at like big picture stuff here. I'm looking at like macro situations that are maybe global or yeah, like I'm looking really big here.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Like even a small group of people, they're like, "Hey, come with you." Like, "Oh, you're harsh in our vibe." I'm like, "Well, this is the wrong place for me. See you later." I don't need it.
Yeah.
When it's necessary, sure. I'm not going to give an example because I don't have one off the top of my head. But I'm sure there's like global-ish something that's going to happen that we'll need to work together in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's where people like you and I will be able to utilize our abilities to help those people that can feel everything, that what we can't do well, and then they can guide us in the right direction to provide the assistance that they require.
Absolutely, and I can hear that we're talking about the same thing. I can hear that we're. I'll say it, and then it might not sound the way that you want to hear, but I can hear that the extent that I can go, I need to go, is to simply acknowledge that there's value in what they do, and that they're providing a service that I might not even be able to understand, and I don't have to be them. I don't have to go exactly along with them.
I agree 100%. As long as they're not encroaching on my personal space or beliefs or my world, we can collaborate if necessary, which I believe is today's. No, it's not today's topic.
It was one way that I considered today, but
yeah.
But see, it's all
foreshadowing.
Yeah, all of these topics that I thought about, like they're all kind of related. Anyways.
Yeah, that was my point. Just whenever it's necessary, just like them, like I feel like FI DOMs or people with FI higher in their stack should also realize, and I feel like a mature one person would, that there are cases where someone who gets stuff done might be the one to call upon, or just
Yeah.
for a moment, just like, okay, this is not how I don't believe in what, like, I don't agree with you. I don't feel the same way you do. I don't feel like this is the solution, but maybe it is. Let's hear you out. And oh, okay, actually, yeah, that would be very helpful. So I'll just, for now, I'll facilitate this type of thinking. Same with TI and E, maybe, oh, we require a certain amount of exploration here, experimentation, um, using your brain and not so much your heart. And yeah, I would imagine they would do the same.
Absolutely, absolutely. Uh, One example I can think of is the Google founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin. As the company grew, they realized that, I think they're both INTPs. They realized, oh, yeah, we probably need an operator in control now, and they brought in Eric Schmidt, who is, in my estimation, ESTJ. So there's probably so much that they disagree with, but they just let him do it, because that's what they needed at the time. um, to go back, the main topic that I was talking through today was the relativity of truth, which we actually explored quite a bit already here. And to retrace, I thought about making today's topic detachment, and then I realized that for a lot of people, detachment doesn't mean anything. For example, I imagine, like, for an ESFJ, detachment is like, why? That's a meaningless life, because for them, like, like taking care of the people around them and making them feel loved and safe is the meaning of life.
Yeah, so I would say that, there are just certain things that are for certain people. Detachment is useful for certain people with certain personalities, and it would be counterproductive, counterintuitive, counter everything to, yeah, an ESFJ, for example. And that's fine.
Yeah. So to wrap this kind of into a statement I'd like to make is, I'm exploring the idea, first of all, to start, like, the 8 functions we have the 8 functions. Now, which one is more important? Well, that is.
See, I don't like that question. Because, we've already kind of touched base on, it's just, that's not a good question. There's no end, like, there's none of them.
Oh, exactly.
They're all not, like, even I was joking before, oh, an ITE.
Yeah.
But I understand, like, that was my whole point with, yeah, but there are cases where FE is important. That's why I'm, like, hearing that from an INTJ should make you go, oh, blasphemy. But, like, that's what I was getting at, is that there is no such thing.
Mm-hmm.
However, and I would argue that there is probably one that's better for certain situations, though.
Oh, absolutely.
And that is where I would leave that question.
Absolutely. And I would say, I think we're both kind of in the middle of an experiment, or I don't know how you would describe it. Okay, first of all, to finish what I was saying, 8 functions, which one's more important? And the answer is yes. None of them are inherently more important. As an INTP, I would heavily favor TI and E, and as an INTJ, you would heavily favor NITE. But that is simply, it's almost like the blueprint that we were born with. Those are the eyes we see out of. And when I hear an ESFJ speak up, I like speak up and oppose what I think, I can understand as well that that's the blueprint that person was born with.
Yeah.
And each person has their own perspective here. And I might suggest that the current experiment I'm running is taking my own perspective as far as it can and finding out what it will create. And I assert almost that the INTPs that we hear about in history are the ones that just almost go, like, all out and say, whatever, I'll just INTP and find out what happens. And then well, I'm sure there are many stories of ones that end up in dead ends, but the ones we remember are the ones that also did that. So, but yeah. How would you describe what you're doing right now? Which is, like, would you say that you are focusing on NIT?
I don't think that's the question you wanted to ask, because the answer is yes. But
Okay.
It's always yes. Like,
Okay.
nothing's changed for me. Like, I've always been this way.
Okay.
all that's changed for me is the vision. It's like I don't know, the ideas I have or the situation I'm in changes around me, sometimes without me noticing. Sometimes a lot of things that you can't control happen in the real world. Even it's like I don't control that either. So frankly, there's very little I have control over. It seems in my life, except for extroverted thinking, and even that technically is a group mentality. So frankly, I have no like FIs or anything. I really can. Nope, no, I don't have control of that. Anyway, because I was thinking, well, yeah, but that's still like it's just feelings come up. You don't control those either. Yeah, I mean, I think just I wish we talked about collaboration. The collaboration we're doing
Okay, we can talk
has
about it.
sparked. I don't know how to explain it. Like, I think the actions I took when I came back to Korea this year or last year is what changed everything for me. And that was
Wow.
just me coming to a realization that 10 years of doing things my way, or just doing things one way, rather, I'm always doing things my way, worked for that time period, and now it's time to move on. So, like we talk about cycles, we talk about that kind of stuff. What was the thing with the colors?
Spiral dynamics.
Spiral dynamics. The spiral dynamics of Derek has moved into a different color, and so I was like, okay, it's time to do other things, to gather information, or to and then we start our experimentation.
Would you call it experimentation, by the way?
Sure. I mean, I don't. This is not an INTP word. I feel like
Or
ICP,
INTJ?
INTJ, INTP would use those a lot, and I experiment often.
Oh, you do? Okay, okay.
Yeah, it's just I've mentioned to you before, just not to the extent that you would. I
Okay,
get the answers I'm looking for, and I move on very quickly,
gotcha.
as quick as possible. In fact, that's where I think you would be fine, and I'm not. Like when I take too long to figure something out, which is what happened with the project I'm working. One of the projects I'm working on. I started to just I was obliterated by it. Like everything started shutting down. Like I just was so frustrated, so angry, and I'm watching time pass, and time, as you know, for an INTJ is the most valuable thing we have, and that's dangerous. Like that's when I become I don't know what word to use, but it's really really poor. And then bad things come out. The shadow functions, take over, and like there's just a lot of weirdness going on. I had some SI moments these past few days, quite deeply. Memories came that I thought were gone forever. Very fascinating stuff, actually. Not really favorable to talk about, but yeah, that happened. So again, that's what I'm saying. Like the other functions are there. I think just because, in fact, I would almost argue all of all the things that I've been through in my life might have caused me to be able to sort of branch into areas that other people haven't are not usually able to do in their psyche because they either didn't have the need to, or maybe just that.
Yeah.
So yes,
Okay.
NIT. um,
They do talk about C.S. Joseph talks about how if someone has a childhood essentially where they're not allowed so much to be in their ego in the first four functions, then they get much more acquainted with the other functions and even and perhaps the fourth function. So
I think that I was NI from birth. Um, I've always lived in my imagination. We've talked about sci-fi stuff. Like I was always into like Marvel or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Transformers, and I could play with toys all day and just build up all these like worlds that just were amazing at the time. I was allowed to do that, but there was a lot of other horrible things going on around me that I had to be involved with that either involved me directly or indirectly, and those affected me a lot. And I don't know that those drew me out of NI. In fact, probably pushed me deeper into it.
okay.
Um, but there was a lot like that's when I realized SE like that. I think I was able to snap in and out of SE much faster because of that, because there was a lot of things I had to be aware of
Okay.
and I had to take care of, and that kind of thing. And my FI became very developed as well because I felt a lot because I had to go through a vast range of emotions that I don't know that again. Let's say I don't. There's no such thing as a perfect child or a good child, but like you play when you're a kid, right? You know those emotions, and like, oh, I cry when you get hurt, like those types of things. But you know, I don't know,
What?
talk about the things I want to talk, like the things that happened to me. But like I had to go through a much deeper, and like the spectrum was far more vast. I feel than the average. Average is not the right word, but let's just use the word average for lack of a better word.
Yeah. Well.
So I don't know to answer your question. Like I don't know that it made me feel FE. It's like, oh, for the family, because like my family was really messed up. Maybe that was some FE there. What's best for the family. I know that I often felt that I was the one who had to take care of people. So like I was like a temporary ISFJ sometimes, for my mother, for example. Um, a lot of stuff like that. So I'm not quite sure, but I've always been very, very, very strongly NITE.
Hmm.
And very, very off topic. We're gonna come back and talk about these things later, I'm sure, because you mentioned to me about your childhood and things like how you behaved, and like you got to a certain grade and like you realized this and then you did that. I did the same thing, so like we'll talk about those in a different episode.
Oh, that'd be a very interesting topic.
Mine started in second grade. I became self-aware, so I am AI. The singularity occurred when I was in second grade, and I will explain that at a different time and place.
You achieved consciousness when you were in
did.
second grade.
I really did.
That's very interesting.
So you were talking about like maybe I'm accessing or had practice or experience with other.
Yeah. Well, the theory that C.S. Joseph shares is that if a person's past could have forced them to not be so much in their first four functions, and so I mean someone can become quite suppressed and also more familiar with their shadow, for example.
Yeah, I think I got very familiar with my shadow. That sounds about right. It's just I studied people quite in depth. I don't know, I matured very fast as a child. I feel like this is the story of INTJ. He's like, oh, he's 11, he's already like coming up with this and doing that and whatever. But like, honestly, that's true. Because 10 years old, I was in second grade. No, that's not right. That's fifth grade. Oh, I was held back. How many years? No, 10 would have been like fifth grade, but whatever. And so yeah, I found that I had. So I think what it was is the personas.
Okay.
That I had to very quickly learn how to create and use and adapt to at a very, very young age in order to survive. At least that's what my little brain was telling me. And that might be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like a chameleon at times.
I see.
And that was simply to avoid violence, to avoid being hurt emotionally, physically, whatever you name it, by people around me.
Interesting.
I learned very quickly what people wanted to hear. Or see, or if you get what I mean. And I don't know what function that is, frankly.
I have my theories. However, I'll turn back to
the relativity of my truth.
relativity of truth, right? Like I've just been thinking about how simply just by being here, I represent and I exude TINE, and perhaps simply by being here, you represent and exude NITE, and just in everything we say, more than I can even tell, I probably exude it as well, and I'm merely raising and pointing out the idea that the functions theory shows how each person is walking around with their eyes, and through those eyes they see a certain reality. And I'm just raising that idea.
Yeah, and not to jump out of the idea, what about people who, I mean, there obviously are people who avoid the truth even as they see it.
Well, I mean, okay.
And I wonder what's going on there. Obviously, I know why they're doing it. It's just I'm wondering.
Well, first of all, I would actually, there's a quote that goes, "Never attribute to malice what you can attribute to ignorance." So,
ignorance.
Yeah. So what I'm saying by that is, it could just be that they've never heard what you're talking about before, and so they will just immediately discard it.
I don't know that that's what I was talking about. I was talking about people who want to avoid what's there.
There's also that, and that is, for example, an ESFJ, right? An ESFJ like would know about some truth, but they'd rather ignore it so that they can keep the peace in the group.
Oh yeah.
Right. So that is them choosing one value is higher than the other, and so that's
Yeah, I did that today. I told you for a week. Actually for since you started the other YouTube channel, there's things that I've only fed you some small amount of information, and only at the times that I felt they were right.
yeah. So
I could just every time I have a thought say it to you, but that would have been terrorizing.
yeah, and also talking about what we're talking about here, it could also be just not seen as true from the other person.
Yeah, I think anything that anyone says, even between two INTJs, I imagine, I really don't know. So I won't even say that. I'll just say like anytime someone says, like honestly, every interaction I have with someone, I have to evaluate everything they say. I feel like,
Uh-huh.
and I feel like it
Yeah,
always
yeah.
is going through a filter,
Yeah, which is
the
like
truth filter.
you extrovert thinking, and so that's the only way you can honestly engage with anyone. Well, not the only. Sorry,
That
I'm
or
not,
SE. So
I'm not-
like,
yeah, I'm not going to say only, but I am going to say that the natural way that you want it, that you engage with the external world is through just the logic of what you're hearing.
yeah, it has to be because like I mentioned with SE, SE would just be accepting of what's going on immediately, and that's dangerous for me, because that could damage the FI, which then will find its way up to NI, and NI will be affected. So it's better to use the TE, extroverted thinking, to filter out the information, because that way it's safer. So I see SE as a, like large. Like they have the two types of misemonji. There's chomisemonji and then misemonji. One is like 10 micrograms per square inch or whatever, and one is the other. And like you can filter out the 2.5, which is what SE can do, but it's gonna let all that chomisemonji in.
Okay.
Whereas TE can filter all of it.
Okay.
It's a HEPA filter.
Interesting. So it's I agree with you where I'm saying
I feel your TI does that.
My NE, like if I use NE, then I can handle other people much better.
Yeah, I feel like there's less. It wouldn't bother you as much. Like you're just like, oh, okay, well, that's possible.
Yeah. So
Also
that's
not possible.
It's like it is the stronger older, like I see it almost as a stronger older brother to my FE. If I use my FE, it's I'll be just like inundated with people. So instead I say like, oh, that's an interesting idea too. Like I could see how you might think that. If I say that, then I can distance myself from their demands.
It's somewhat. I don't know if it works for everyone, but it's very diffusing. I see it.
Mhm.
As I don't know if like, because I can see some people being angry. Like an ESTJ might be like, yeah, well,
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Do what I said.
Yeah. Any is very diffusive. It's like someone says one thing and I say, well, that could be 8 other things.
Splinters it. Dissipates.
Yeah. So can I bring this like I like my natural.
I feel like if we keep
aim is-
defining what relativity of truth is as we're going, that might help
Okay.
keep putting things together. There's nothing wrong with like, because we're kind of just there's like the seed definition, and then now we're branching off and making complete definition. Or not.
The main thing I wanted to bring up and just like look through the lens of is that people speak from their eyes, from the functions that they have allegiance to, and when I say eyes, I mean the cognitive functions. And I'm thinking through in my own life that I'm just reminding myself that that's happening, and as soon as someone speaks, this is my NE talking, like I don't have to listen to it as like, oh, that person is asserting truth at me. I can say instead that person is speaking from their functions.
What about people who are extremely affected by it? There's people that when I say stuff, they're just like, what? Like they accept what I'm saying is truth, even they get angry at it. I
Yeah,
don't know
well,
what types those are, but that's for me very hard to deal with. I'm like, you seem to me. I just think, oh, you're emotionally unwound, or
I would suggest, or my theory, I would suggest that those people have very low and oppositional TE. They hear TE and they react to it. That's a possibility. What was I going to say?
I'm still like I'm Rick and Mortying it over here, talking through your eyes. I'm just picturing a person with a mouth in their eyes, and
Yeah. Oh, the one example I had was, uh, now when I realize I have once again a theory on what values the Korean culture is based on, which is really ISTJ. I think ISTJ, SI is like, this has been proven, like this has lasted this long, and that is inherently valuable. That's what SI essentially says. SI says like, I see that we have this timeline, and I'm going to value this timeline not consciously, just like I don't consciously value TI. They value the past. And then TE is like the results that you can get from what are the results that I can get. And so this is the eyes that they see through. And that can be quite difficult. It can be quite difficult for anything to change because the fourth function here is extrovert intuition. So considering a new idea is difficult here. Yeah.
the biggest with SITE people though, they adhere to what has worked in the past. However, the future is always one second ahead. It's always one step ahead, and this refusal to recognize that change is occurring without them is counterintuitive or counterproductive to SITE though. So
Oh, yes.
I feel like they're not mature in that sense. Because TE says you should know what the group is thinking. Okay, you might say, yeah, but if everyone's SITE, well, they're not. Only a certain percentage are. And
Yes.
less than 20%. And let's say even if you have SIT in your stack, that's still probably less than the majority. And therefore, you're wrong.
Well,
and so you have to adapt, and they refuse to, and that causes a lot of friction.
Mm.
And with the younger folks these days who have completely different stacks now, there's a lot of butting of heads, so to speak. However, with the old ways, it's built perfectly such that that's not allowed. You're not allowed to go against what your elders tell you. So therefore, SIT prevails regardless of the majority or not. The same with the government currently. I won't go too into depth with the government. But let's talk about that concept for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And so culture, the way things were done, or the way things, and that's the way things are done, or else. The reason why that prevails is thanks to Confucianism, which is called Yu-Gi-Oh here, which is fascinating because it was created in China, and yet China has completely dumped it.
Yep.
Ages ago. Because they had the wherewithal to realize, well, yeah, but got to move forward, still can respect those people. And that's what I'm talking about. It's like respect is what we're looking for here. Respect what the younger generations, what their truths are, what they believe is important to their eyeball mouths, and work together. But that's not happening. It's being forced now, and it's causing a lot of chaos. It's causing a lot of violence. It's causing a lot of argument. But however, the problem is Korea is not a place for arguing, is it? So how does one argue when you can't even open up the floor to conversation? I see this issue going on in the United States as well. So actually, I would ask you, how would you approach that situation? How might one approach that situation to at least get the ball rolling?
I view the U.S. almost as a
Korea.
Well, okay.
Sorry, I want you to talk about Korea.
Well, I'll use the U.S. as like my weapon here.
Okay.
Because the U.S. business culture was quite conservative and quite conformist and collectivist up until almost like the 70s, maybe the 80s, uh, and it could not be changed from within. It was instead changed from without
Okay.
through the movement through the movement of culture, through the movement of alternative forms of business. In other words, the computer industry.
Which Korea has, and they've completely avoided doing it the right. Like the ocean was, the computers were like, wee, and everybody's going with the computers, but Korea's like, nah, we're gonna have computers, but we're still gonna do it this stupid SITE backwards ass way. Oh, but look
It's
at computing here.
uh-huh.
Like they have really smart people, a lot of hackers, sure, but like they're still using like Windows 95 on machines and like pirating things and like just using old softwares because they refuse to learn how to do it the right way. They stack. You'll have like 16 different web extensions in order to open a bank account because they refuse to learn the right way to create a website. Websites are one page sites. Why?
Yeah.
Because they want all the information in one place. They don't want pages.
Yeah.
Let fewer clicks.
We realized that we had been going from this relativity of truth topic over into talking about the culture of Korea, and we thought that would be a worthwhile topic. So we will we will continue that in the next episode here, and we will wrap up relativity of truth right now and move on to that. See you next time.